It's a very valid point because the general conversations about corruption, we cannot diverge it from the general issues of governance in our various countries. And the issues of devolution of powers, the issue of decentralization is key in that conversation. The more government is closer to the people, the more people have access to participate and engage with their duty bearers, as you mentioned. And I think that that is a very interesting point that you have raised, and I'm sure our rapporteurs are taking note of that point as well. There was the hand in the middle. Yes, please take the floor. I'll come to the side.
Thanks. My name is Lea Mugera from Oxfam Pan-Africa. Just going by yesterday's discussions and looking at how corruption impacts different realizations of women's rights, I observed that we missed an important point on how corruption impacts on women's land rights. Yet we know that women face a lot of challenges, and it's even worse when it comes to owning land, especially in acquiring titles. That's the point where I see corruption affecting women in a bad way.
Thank you very much. The issue of land rights, everyone knows that even land issues generally it's a very tricky business. And when you even then look at it within the broader conversations on land rights and the access for women to such rights, it becomes a double jeopardy, if I can use that euphemism. So I think that these are also issues that we will still delve into. We have the entire day to look at all of that. I saw the other hand there. I'll come to this line later. I'm going. I'm sorry, I already crossed. So yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je viens du Mali. Donc, j'étais un peu en retard. Donc, c'est ce matin que j'ai pu rejoindre la conférence. C'est pour dire que le Mali a un peu travaillé dans ce sens. En voulant inclure les femmes dans les secteurs de contrôle. C'est-à-dire qu'on veut désormais sensibiliser les femmes pour pouvoir promouvoir, pour obtenir la promotion de l'intégrité dans les activités des ISC, des institutions supérieures de contrôle. Donc cela peut-être va permettre la promotion de la lutte contre la pauvreté et la promotion de la personne même humaine. Donc il faut peut-être influer, on entend par ce sens influer sur les femmes afin qu'elles puissent intégrer les institutions de contrôle et pour combattre vigoureusement la corruption. C'était pour cet exemple que je voulais donner. Merci.
Thank you very much. I think we'll come to this side now, Raima, and then we'll take you.
Good morning. My name is Karima Ghanem. I'm from Morocco. I'm president of the International Center for Diplomacy. We have to agree today that a lot of efforts has been made at the level of legislation to increase transparency within public and private institutions, and also to encourage the engagement of non-state actors in fighting corruption. Yet I would like to go back to reality of the implementation. I would like to take the restriction instead of encouraging, the participation more specifically of non-state actors in fighting corruption, basically they're not encouraging participation, but they're restricting it by the lot of paperwork that these civil society actors have to go through in order to access one document. So basically, I think there need to have a cross-cutting dialogue between civil society actors and legislators in that sense. Thank you.
All right, the issue of participation, I'm sorry, I would have to chuck you. I'll go to the colleague from Seychelles.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Winifred Bakari. I'm a police officer and a human rights activist. What I took home yesterday from Seychelles. What I took home yesterday was that when we talk about corruption, it's always almost about financial, material, government, and good governance and all that. But what I took home from all the presentations made was that something said by the Director of Political Affairs of the African Union about when it comes to fighting corruption, fight it inside you first and foremost. Because I believe that the basis of fighting corruption is the principles inside you, the integrity that will cause you not to be corrupt or anything else that you should not be. I think what fighting corruption is something that should be taken between the government and the non-governmental organizations in every country in Africa or elsewhere, where we take the fight to the grassroots level, where we educate the women that they have rights. And when they know that they have rights, then they will deny corruption, the things that corruption do against them. When there is opportunity, as a police officer, I believe that when there is opportunity for corruption to happen, then corruption happens. But when you are educated and aware enough to stop it, then you will be able to fight it, even on an individual level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that point is a very important one. Even at the regional meetings, the regional youth meetings, we had, as part of the training exercise, a session that looked at ethical leadership, where we were focusing on the individual, and we were reviewing, the popular philosophical story of Plato on the ring of Gyges, that what would you do if you have a ring that allows you to get away with anything that you do? And it was a very interesting conversation across the three regions, across all the regions when we exercised with that story. The idea of this morning is also to highlight why we have structured the program the way it is, why we have the many people sitting in this room the way we have them, and the participants and all of that. As you might have observed since yesterday, we have colleagues from judicial bodies, whether they are judges, whether they are prosecution officers. We have colleagues from the police force from quite a few countries. We have colleagues who work in the civil society. We have colleagues who work in the media. We have those who work in the policy space. The general idea is how do we foster partnership across all these various divides? Because our own experience and from what we see is that mostly, and I don't say all of us, but mostly, most of our interventions have always been in silos. Those who work in the policy space have a few organizations that they normally engage with. Those in the media have their own paintbrush which they use, depending on what the situation is in the newsroom. Those in the academia, bury their heads in their books, particularly in places where there are challenges with funding for research and all of that. They bury their heads in their book and come up with their own analysis of the situation. How can we further work together? And I think it was the ambassador of Ghana that asked the question, where do we start? For me, one of those ways, or one of the points of starting, is here, where you already have this, I would call, galaxy of individuals working in many interesting areas, coming together to collaborate on initiatives. The question asked earlier by Bright on the issue of model law, you already have an answer. If there's an opportunity as an organization to also, for instance, organize a consultation around that issue, you know who to speak to now. And that is why for us also on the part of the African Union, we ensure to bring everybody within the policy process, at least within the organization. So you have represented here, members of the Permanent Representative Committee, which the Ambassador of Ghana is representing. We have colleagues from the Embassy of Nigeria. We have colleagues from the Embassy of Botswana. And in our own policy-making process, these are the people to engage with because that is the starting point. Whatever issues they put on the table, it is almost certain that it will go through the entire process. And we need to begin to engage with them. The opportunity you have is that you will sit maybe at lunch or maybe at tea break to be able to interact with them freely without any need of prior appointment and all of that. So let's seize that appointment. And it's the same for many of us in here. We have Mr. Kuyok, who is an executive director of a national anti-corruption body. We have many people from, many of our colleagues from the regional economic communities. Ambassador Sangare is from CENSAD. We have colleagues from IGAD, who I know is here, and a few other of the colleagues. So let's leverage those opportunities. We cannot say that the AU is not opening up when we come to events like this, and we do not take advantage of the people that we meet. This is our own small contribution. It is not enough, but we believe it's a starting point. That is my first point. The second point also is that we had a few conversations yesterday, and I had my own reading or interpretation of a few of it. One was the general discussions we were having on the issue of whether Africa was, in the pre-colonial days, was corrupt or not corrupt. And I know that we've always said this, and I think that throughout the regional consultations, and I think this meeting as well, we've said it. I think it's the danger of a single story. Africa was not El Dorado pre-colonial area. We had the good things, we had the not too good, we had the bad ones. I would imagine that in many of our pre-colonial cultures, there were issues of evicting people from a particular kingdom to another place because they've done something. But in that same pre-colonial area is the story where people will tell you they simply put their wares outside. There's nobody looking over it. You buy, you put the number of stones of how much, and then you go away. We have both stories, and we must be able to balance those stories. And the reason why I'm raising it is because we often have just focused, and we raised it yesterday as well, on the monetary aspect of corruption. I do not think we should do that, and that is why this meeting particularly is looking at women's rights. One of the greatest crimes in pre-colonial African traditional society is actually the issue of rape. If my history classes serves me well, if anybody is arrested or charged with rape, it's a total disbarment or eviction from the community or something like that in many of our traditional society. But many of those traditional societies also have kings who can actually say, 1, 2, 3 of you, you are my wives now. Yeah. So and that is where some of these things start. You know, it wasn't just that these Europeans traveled in and brought corruption. You know, it's the argument we're making today, that when people come and sign contracts and take our money away, it's a two-way. There is the taker and there's the receiver. So we must nuance our conversation to be able to, and I'm saying this because it was one of the issues that created a lot of buzz online on our platform yesterday when we posted the issue of our traditional society, and I thought that is a conversation that we also should bring into the hall. It's 9:34. This was supposed to go for 30 minutes, so I would stop it there, and we'll go into the session of the day. At this point, may I invite Mr. Bright, who will be our moderator for today's session on lessons from the front lines, sustaining women's leadership in combating corruption in Africa. They will be sharing with us their own insights based on the work that they do in their various organizations on sustaining women's leadership.